Hey everyone, and welcome back to the X-Ring. On this episode, as promised, Tony Marfione is going to let you look at his multi-million-dollar gun collection. It's really something to see, so stick around. Hey Tony, thanks for inviting me over.
You bet.
So before we get started into this gun room, why don't you tell the folks basically who you are, your company, and a little bit of history about you.
Just a little bit of history. So, going way back. For a lot of folks that know, I'm the owner of Microtech Knives and Marfione Customs. I started making knives, I think it was probably late 1992. We incorporated in 94 in Vero Beach, Florida, and we're still doing it today. So we just celebrated our 30th year anniversary this year,
Congrats.
Which is kind of a big deal. But, we love living in here in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and, we still have a big factory in PA, but a majority of our facilities now here are located in Hendersonville. So
okay, in North Carolina.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know the knife history, but you didn't really get into Microtech Knives until you were about 24, right?
That's right.
But previous to that, you were a gun guy way before you were a knife guy.
Absolutely, 100%. My interest, I've always had a big interest in pocket knives. How could you not?
Yeah.
Since a kid, always had a, pocket knife of some sort, whether, it was an infatuation, but, the firearm side of thing, always sparked my interest in so many different ways. Not only from, the mechanisms, metallurgy, how they work, but it's been an infatuation for a very, very long time. Even to the point that, very, very early part of my career was doing gunsmithing work for multiple, shops in the area, Newport Richey. I started doing coatings, for a lot of people that don't know that. The early, K-coat was the moly resin from John Norrell, and I used to buy it through the mail, and I would refinish guns, and then start taking on doing more and more work on rifles, learning from some of the gunsmiths that I worked along with.
Okay.
And just had a knack for machining and everything else. I was an ace. It just seemed like I just caught onto it very, very quickly.
Yeah. And
could thread barrels, could do just about anything, retap receivers, take these guns apart, cleaning, refinishing. And then, of course, the interest in NFA items came at a very, very young age. So I was exposed to that very, very early on. And it's been an addiction since then. Yeah,
I can imagine. And you did actually work for Knight's Armament.
I'd say out of everybody that I worked for, probably, I worked for. Yeah, I was, just to mention just a few of the gun shops that I worked for, because I was not old enough at the time to even have an FFL. So under their tutelage, I worked for them and did the work under their supervision and their licensing and everything else. So you had B&B Gun Shop, which was an indoor gun range.
Okay.
Neat dynamic there, and University Gun and Pawn at the time, which was out of Tampa. And Charlie, I think he still does it, but he was one of the largest Class 3 dealers in the known area.
Okay.
There, it wasn't just a pawn shop, but Charlie, bought and sold Class 3 and what they consider to be pre-band rifles and all that sort of stuff. He had the largest selection of that stuff anywhere that I ever recognized. So I met a lot of the Class 3 circuitry through Charlie and met a lot of the purveyors in that area, and they exposed me to some unbelievable collections at the time. Couldn't afford them back then, because think about it, back in the, you think about the first time I shot an MP5 SD when I was 18. That was 1988. You could probably buy one for a couple grand.
Yeah, exactly.
At the time, whether it be a sear gun from Fleming or anybody else, but now they go for $40,000, $50,000, which is really interesting. But neat dynamic to meet, meet and greet a lot of these guys that were the forefront of a lot of this work, like Kent Lamont, all these guys, even Jonathan Siner. The guy was a quack, but he was full of knowledge and everything else. But I'd say that probably the most well-rounded job I had was working for Knight's Armament.
Okay.
That brought my family from Newport Richey all the way over to Vero Beach, and it was a really, really interesting experience. And even for those folks that are like, Reed's so tough to work for, of course he is. Because he expects when you come on board, he pays you, he, gives you the insurance, he gives you all these things. Maybe they do insurance, I'm not sure, but I think they do now. But, he expected results like anybody else. And having a business of my own and doing it for as long as we have and having as many as employees as we have, we understand what it's like to be under the pressure of, making our regimen every week. So we get that. But that was a really, really great experience. So
you got fully transferable.
Yes.
Big money.
Big bucks.
Then you've got pre-samples. Big money still, but not the same money.
The same money.
And then a post-sample would be anything after the Hughes Act.
That is correct. Any guns that were manufactured or imported after that date would consider to be restricted. And you have to be an SOT, FFL SOT, to even be anywhere remotely close to acquiring them.
Correct. So, and then that price, while it's still high, it is not anywhere near these. So, for example, what we were talking about with a fully transferable HK MP5, 50 to 60K, a pre-sample is bringing what, roughly?
Let's just, if we're just talking MP5s right now, you see it kind of fluctuate because it's all what somebody's willing to pay.
Yeah.
But I think right now probably you could get a decent pre-sample for around between 17.5 to 20 grand.
And remember, that's just based on that classification with the ATF.
I remember in the 90s, Charlie Allen selling those pre-samples for $1,000 to the guys.
And then, if we would have just known.
1,000
just buy more,
Same with the Sears from Palmer or anybody else.
We would have invested everything. And then a post-sample MP5, that's a machine gun. It depends on how it comes about, but without a law letter or something like that, you're probably still looking at about $8,000 today. Ish.
Maybe $8,000. I mean, the thing about it is if you have an FFL SOT that's been in the business for years, and a lot of the guys are now starting to get to the point where they've done it.
They're getting old, they're selling
getting old, they're getting out of it, they're dropping their license.
Yeah.
If they have those post samples on their books, they got two options. They either cut them in half, turn them into parts kits, destroy them,
or
turn them
sell them to any FFL.
Or you could, they can get them off their books, but they can only be acquired by an SOT that is a manufacturer like you and I have.
Correct.
So you have to be an SOT that has a manufacturing capability to buy these or acquire these from a dealer that's shutting down their license. Other than that, most of the time it had been required in the past that if you're an FFL SOT, a lot of guys that sold to departments would have to get demonstration letters or something along those lines.
Yes.
Which are always tricky to do, but that's what the ATF required. And back in the earlier days, you could acquire 2 of each sales sample variation according to the letters to be able to put these on your book to have reasonable need to be able to have these for demonstration.
Correct. So, for example, guys, you guys have seen the Daniel Defense Mark 18 that I have. Tony has one as well. We are both FFL and SOT manufacturers. Mine with my company, Tony's with Tony's company. But that firearm as a post sample, the things we got them, 3 years ago or so?
That's right.
So 3 years ago, I mean, you're only talking about $1,400-$1,500. It might even be less than that. But that needed to be accompanied by what we call a law letter. And that law letter has to be documented by a sheriff or a chief of police saying that they want a demonstration of that. Now, Tony and I will do demonstrations for agencies if they're wanting to see a sample, and that's what the system is designed for, but it's not, a $30,000 Colt.
It is not. It is not.
But it's brand new.
And exactly, it is. And the DNA, like as you say, the DNA of the collection, there are some of the parts that, yes, I collect.
Yeah.
But the majority of what I've done over the course of some years is, of course, with us exploring, researching the suppressors, back in the earlier days, 2006 through about almost 6 years, we manufactured rifles.
Yes, you did.
We made the MSARs, and so having that ability to continue to do the research is the reason why I maintain this FFL.
Correct.
The metallurgy, the manufacturing, the plastics, the composites, coatings, heat treat processes, and everything else. I've learned so much from the firearm side. So having the ability to continue to do this research is what I do. That's what I contribute to Microtech. That's what I contribute to MDI. And that's what I want to continue to do. So part of it is an element of a passion of a collection, which is separate than the actual R&D side, is the reason why I actually do this.
Got it.
Yeah.
And guys, Tony is not just another pretty face. When it comes to machining, when it comes to coatings, when it comes to metallurgy, I mean, I've really not met anybody that has the knowledge that Tony has. Not only that, he's also a very accomplished shooter. So this is not just a collection that I have just to have type person. I mean, we've won matches together. We won Snipers Unknown in 2018. We trained hard for that. We did Snipers Unknown in 2020, I believe, or 2021. I think we came in third.
Skipped one from third.
And then I think we came in 10th at the Burris Extreme out in that was out in Douglas, Wyoming, or somewhere.
That was a wonderful match.
Yeah, so a very competent shooter, and Tony's always been a huge supporter of the Second Amendment. We support we as in Microtech have always supported a lot of the shooting sports, whether it was PRS, whether it was 3-gun. You actually used to run your own series. It was the Microtech 3-gun, the Pro-Am. And so, there's a lot more to it than somebody just taking money and buying guns. There's a lot of appreciation here for what it is. And so without taking any more of your time, because I know it was a little long-winded opening, let's go ahead and check out the collection. So before we get started, I mentioned on the previous episode when we were doing the hunting rifle stuff for the elk hunt coming up, that one of my jobs with Microtech is to maintain all of these. There's not. Would it be a fair statement to say that I've touched and worked on every single firearm in here?
You've curated this collection for many years.
Yeah, a lot of these I know. I know the serial numbers on them and everything else. Been through multiple audits. But guys, this is truly one of the best collections I've ever seen in my life. Some of these have actually been on the channel. Very few, but some of them have been on the channel. But the way that Tony has everything kind of organized and broken up is kind of by manufacturer. You're a big HK guy.
I dig it.
A lot of history with HK. We'll get into this other stuff later, but on this first wall here, we have, the HKs. There are some very special pieces here. There's one marked here, HK T&E only. Tony, why don't you tell us about what T&E is and what it stands for?
The test and evaluation guns, from what I was told, I acquired this particular piece from Gordon Miller that assured me that it came out of the HK's Gray Room out of Virginia. So the T&E marked guns were T&E only marked guns. So some of those have been acquired over the years, but that one is in absolute pristine condition. And, there's a few here in the collection.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, when we see a lot of these are going to be transferables or they're going to be pre-samples.
Pre-sample.
There are some post samples that are kind of along this wall here, but these are truly collectible. Starting at the top, Tony, why don't you start naming some of these off and maybe some quick history?
Yeah, you got some HK53s, which I've always really loved. I believe that I have 2 posties sitting there, and then the rest of them are pre-samples.
Yeah.
So I always love those, and they're a dream to shoot. They're a dream to shoot. There's a matching set of HK33 Ks.
Yeah.
So this is both consecutive serial numbered guns right here.
Wow.
And again, in pristine condition, 2 pre-samples. Post sample, I picked this up out of a collection. It came with it, so I ended up with a full-sized 33. Which is not too bad.
Yeah, and basically, this is a historical archive, guys. This was a prototype rifle, the G11. This actually came off the desk of one of the CEOs for like 40 years.
That is correct. That is correct. So, an acquaintance of ours that collects, the Microtech and Marfione Customs. I've known Axel for years, and he told me one day, he goes, "You love the HKs, with his German accent." He goes, "My father wants to send you something." It's like what? He goes, "He was the CEO of HK for 40 years." And sure enough, a box came for me, and I even kept the cutout, off the package. But he sent me a bunch of really cool knickknacks, of course. And there were stories every time, when Axel told me about the piece, he's like, "Yeah, this used to be on my dad's desk, and we were never allowed to play with any of this stuff that he had on his desk. So they sent me some books, hand signed from a lot of the crew from HK. So it was just a neat appreciation. It was probably the neatest thing I've received.
Yeah.
You know, from a memorabilia standpoint, there's some really neat effects here, you know, out of Mr. Muller's collection. So I was really blessed to get that. But neat.
Guys, we've checked all these firearms. However, there are some that we do keep loaded in here, just certain ones. But, you know, the plan was, and we had talked about this months ago, is we were actually going to start having more of these on the channel. This is a perfect example of a UMP45. Great setup, but the problem is YouTube changed the rules. So us being able to shoot the machine guns is severely demonetized. It has to be age restricted. You guys know that I released the MG74 video, and unfortunately it got shadow banned so bad. I mean, it barely even made 1,000 views. And unfortunately, I mean, yes, for those 1,000 people, I do appreciate you watching, but it's just to the point where, and it's not about the monetization so much as it is the time it takes to shoot the video, the ammunition, the editing. It's sometimes not worth reviewing that machine gun because it just doesn't get the visibility that it needs. So that's probably not going to happen, but like I said, all the stuff is really classic, and a lot of stuff was going to be reviewed, but we're just going to have to figure out what we're going to do with that at a later time. If we move behind Tony, I know it's a little tight in here. You've got a huge collection of P7s, either the M8s, the M13s. Some of these I actually recognize because there was one of these that used to be mine. I think it's this one right here, maybe.
I think so.
But you've got the Mark 23s, but there's something with your history with regards to this whole program. How were you involved with this?
That's right. So my first, I think our first job, the crew was headed up by Doug Olson, that was the chief engineer at Knights at the time.
Yep.
And his responsibility was to develop the suppressors for HK, for the offensive handgun. And our first trials, of course, were made in the model shop. We made all those pieces by hand.
Yeah.
It was a really unique thing. So anytime I see a Vero Beach suppressor, I take a closer look at it just to see, hey, was that one of the ones that...
You probably touched it.
I probably touched it at one time or another. So it was really neat, the suppressors that we did. So it's fond to my heart, because we did so much really neat, groundbreaking work. You think about that back in the 90s. This stuff was bulletproof made.
Yeah.
And that's what I admire about Reed is just, he was very specific, very specific.
Yeah.
If you want a can for 9mm, we're going to build you the best can, the best suppression system for that caliber.
Yeah.
He didn't believe, like, I know there's a lot of multi-cal and you could probably shoot 9 through the 45 or whatever, but he made these very caliber specific, and the crew made these bulletproof, and the testing that we did on these things was pretty brutal.
Yeah.
But the manufacturing techniques, coatings, and everything else had been developed over the course of that little bit of time. So it was really a privilege for me to be on the ground floor of working on this stuff. So
that's cool.
Yeah, it's really, really neat. And they don't make them that much different than they do today. I think maybe welding and stuff, they probably use robotics since they moved to Titusville and everything else. But, Knights Armament, they'll go down into the history books, for sure.
Absolutely. All right, so what we're going to do, guys, and like I said, we're skipping over a lot of really, really unique pieces. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you. But what we're going to do is start working our way down, because I don't want this to be an hour-long video, but I wanted you guys to get more of an inside look at basically the man behind this collection. Not so much the collection, but the knowledge that he has and the history that you have with firearms, not just knives. Everybody assumes Tony Marfione is knives, and he is. And more on that later. When we get into edged weapons as far as swords and things like that, you have an unbelievable collection.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
But let's go ahead and continue moving on down. All right, so Tony, my question for you is, when you were able to purchase your first machine gun, what was it?
It was an MP5 SD A3 from Fleming Firearms.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you love the MP5s.
I really do, because I cut my teeth on those. The first machine gun I shot was an MP5 SD.
Yeah, I think I've seen that picture of you with the long hair and everything
and
else.
Glasses in the 80s and everything.
I'm going to find that picture and put it on this video.
Yeah, this is going to be great. We have it.
But coming down, guys, you're going to see a bunch of different variations of MP5s. You've got the SDs here, kind of like the Holy Grail. I know a bunch of these are loaded, so we're not going to work anything, but these are the MP7s. You've got the MP7 A1 and the A2.
And the A2. Yeah,
and these are just phenomenal firearms. They're kind of like the holy grail of HKs right now.
They're a lot of fun, and it seems to be what a lot of people gravitate towards,
Yeah.
you know, and just a neat setup. But it's gained a lot of popularity, and I know that there's some, adaptations being made by
Yeah, Tommy Built and some of these other ones.
Made an adaptation, which I give them some commend, to even make that platform. But
Yeah.
just it's a neat thing. It's a neat thing. But being from the old school, the MP5 is the way for me.
And just as an example, guys, right now, MP7s, if you can get one, if you can
even find one.
they run anywhere from $50,000 to $60,000.
It seems like they're
each.
very, very inflated in price in these variations, even for post samples.
Yeah, people are willing to pay for it. It's almost like the watches. You get somebody wants a certain watch, they'll pay more for it just because they can't get it. But guys, there's so much history here. I mean, here's one that's really unique. It's not that it's expensive, but it's very
No,
unique.
it's cool.
It's an HK flare gun.
Flare gun.
And so Tony's got a ton of examples of these with the different flares and everything. So it's really kind of like a history book on HK stuff. It's actually really cool.
And it's neat because every time I get a chance to review a collection that I might be interested, there's always somebody that has all this. So if you're buying their guns, you got to buy all the memorabilia and all the stuff to go with it. And sometimes I end up with, tons of parts. You've seen
Yeah.
the parts.
Yes, I have.
Cases of
Just
parts.
crates and crates.
and crates of parts. But neat memorabilia over the course of some time, from the straight magazines to the older school type stuff. Some of the magazines, I need to look, but I actually have some of those that are 1970, which is my birth year.
Nice.
Yeah, I think these might be 68s, but yeah, so they're just neat stuff to try to go back and take a look. Really neat, iconic platform.
Yeah,
Iconic.
it is. It's one of my favorites as
Yeah.
well. I've had mine on the channel. I recently picked up an SD that I never got to review because they changed the rules
Sure.
and all of that.
Yeah.
But these are just unbelievable firearms. I mean, I wouldn't say Tony's an HK fanboy because he was so involved with HK, but you like them all.
I do, and like I said, back in the 80s and 90s, that's what everybody was running.
Yeah.
You couldn't find a department that didn't have MP5s.
That's right, everybody.
Everybody was running MP5, so you had to be versed in these systems. I mean, even the work that we did at NICE was, a lot of that earlier works was revolved around Navy guns or the offensive handgun programs and everything else. So. And then of course, all the work that we did on the M4s, which was crazy. It was crazy amount of very neat new requests for innovation. So, what you have here is you have some post samples, but a majority of them are pre-samples, which are, the cherries of my collection.
They are what they are.
Yeah, they are.
We have some more MP5s over here, a bunch of SDs. And guys, these are perfect examples of these. These aren't ones that are beat up, that were turned into department guns or anything like that. These are truly collectibles. We're probably already at that mark that we were talking about value-wise just up to this point. Before we even start to getting to that way, I mean, there's just a ton of belt feds and things like that. We're going to keep continuing on because I don't want this to be a 1 hour long video. All right, so I couldn't get too far ahead of myself because I was going to go to the next section, but there's no way to go past this section without talking about some of these great rifles you have over here. I know you've got an HK, the G41. Why don't you talk about the 41 and basically how it was developed?
Yeah, the G41 was developed, I believe it was for the submission for the M4 trials.
Okay.
So back in the 80s when the military was looking at replacing the earlier, M16A1 variations, going to the M4, which they adopted, HK's entry was the 41. It'll take an M16 magazine.
Yep.
And carrying handle, all that sort of thing, select fire 3-shot burst. Stomps a little bit,
Yeah, it does. We shot it.
Yeah, we shot it. So the cyclic rate on it is steady, but the impulse is a little strong for even a 5.56. But a very, very cool, iconic piece, for back in the trials themselves. It's a neat rifle.
They are neat. This is another one, and like I said, we just checked it before we got on here, guys. You can't really talk about an HK collection without having an authentic HK 416s.
That's right.
I carried one identical to this for many years, and it was a solid platform. I love the HK 416. They bring incredibly crazy money now. It's a great piston system. It's a little heavy though.
It is, but it was, HK's version of what they consider to be the M4, so the 416s for the guys that have them, love them, and that one's a good one. That's a shooter for sure.
For sure.
For sure.
Yeah, we actually shoot all of these. I know you're a huge Elcan guy, which, a lot of you guys might say, oh, I don't like Elcan, but they actually work.
I'll tell you what, there's a big difference from what we've done. For me, it makes it easy because, ranging targets, being able to hit multiple targets at different ranges successfully with that optic has worked very well for me. Even for the long range stuff.
Even out to 700 yards, guys.
It's not a problem, guys.
It's not a problem.
So.
And it's not that 700 is a long shot, but when you're taking, basically a duty rifle or even some of our more accurized DMR platforms, as long as you get that round tuned to that reticle, I've seen Tony walk him out to 700 at 3-gun matches, no issue whatsoever. I'm like, man, I wish he would just go to a normal LPVO instead of using an Elcan. He goes, I like it, it works. I'm not going to argue with success.
So on any of the 10-inch or 11-inch guns, you would have a 1-4 Elcan.
Yeah.
On anything a little bit better than that, it'd probably be a 1-6, like what I've used for the 3-gun, which for me, it worked extremely well.
Yeah, it did. So what we're going to do is now we're going to get into the Colt section because you're a huge Colt guy.
Love them.
So let's talk about these.
Absolutely. So, getting my teeth cut on a lot of this stuff at a very, very young age, you couldn't go to a gun store or a gun range and not find a Colt AR-15 or something along those lines.
That's right.
So the old government carbine was one of my favorites that I love, with the old pencil style barrel and everything else. And then, of course, when I got an opportunity to work at Reed's, it was all revolved around the Colt platforms at that point in time. So I've had just a love for these rifles, the earlier stuff.
Yeah.
I have a couple of them just because when I go to buy a few rifles, like, hey, you got to buy this one too. But I think a majority of the pieces I have would be the 80s vintage stuff, especially the fully transferable guns.
Guys, these are perfect examples of those. These aren't ones that were manufactured by Marfione Industries or anything like that.
No, these are original Colts.
Right now, original Colt machine guns bring close to 30 grand each.
It depends.
20 to 30.
You get an M16A1. That's one that I've had a dozen of them, but I don't have that adaptation in the collection sitting that I need to pick one up. So if anybody knows, but most of them would be like the Colt Commando M16A2s, stuff like that is what I have.
Those still bring a solid $20-something thousand though.
Colt Commando right now, if you could find one for 20, I'd buy 10 of them. But right now they're bringing around 45 to 48.
Oh, so they're even more. Yeah. So there's great examples of those in there. We're going to get into kind of like, this is kind of where it kind of departs and it gets into like little small brackets, everything from BNTs down to AKs down to SIGs. So let's go ahead and pick up there. Now, another thing I want to remind everybody is that almost everything you guys have seen, with the exception of pistols and stuff, this is actually these are machine guns. Okay, so you got to keep that in mind. There are other gun rooms throughout where we're at right now, but a lot of that is either going to be a competition-based room. This is more 100%. Of the NFA.
I'm going to say it comprises from a majority of the NFA items, 100%. Yeah, you have other areas that would be, like I have one area that's specific just towards competition rifles and pistols. Yeah,
and maybe we'll look at that some other time, but there's a lot of history there, especially with Tony and I with some of these 100%, matches.
Yeah.
There are rifles that we won that were trophies from matches.
I couldn't believe it.
But coming on down, we have everything from CZ Scorpions up there, B&Ts, the Stens, which, that's got a great history.
Yeah, the Sterlings are neat. They're designed, I think the design originated from the Sten.
Yeah.
The way that the magazine comes out.
The Mark V,
but the Mark V, integrally suppressed machine gun.
Super quiet.
Super stupid quiet. And that one's always a joy. Anytime we would bring that to the range, that's what everybody wanted to shoot. So, you got some SIG, you got a couple, variations of AK. But neat. But I'd say probably out of this wall here, I'd say one that shoots the smoothest. Yeah, you can grab that one out of there.
Yeah, so guys, I had an opportunity to pick up one of these, and it was, I'm still kind of kicking myself that I didn't. This is a SIG 552. It's just a great platform. The reason that I didn't do it is because parts availability. There really aren't any.
It's very hard and rare and in between for these type of guns to begin with anyway.
Yeah.
But very well made, and they just shoot like a dream. Very smooth shooters.
Yeah, they are. you know, this was kind of like the predecessor, you know, all of this, the 51s, the 52s, the 53s, to the SIG 5, it was the SIG Classic. I can't remember.
5.56, or
5.56.
they did some other variations. I don't follow it a whole lot these days, but the older stuff, I dig it.
Yeah, I mean, just the finishes on these guys, I mean, you know, when I did the MG74, just the winter trigger guard, well, you know what? This one's got one where you can take that trigger guard and slide it out of the way so you can get gloves in here. Just a lot of just Swiss.
Tritium
Beautiful.
sights, yeah.
Just very beautiful.
Refined for what it is, but as far as a shooter, I mean,
and these can be shot. We were going to do that, and
Yeah,
of course they changed the ruling on it, and so it really wasn't worth trying to do it. But there's a couple of these in here that are just awesome examples of some great classic machine guns. You have the Beretta PM12, you got the Mini, the Micro Uzi, the Mac 10s.
Gotta have Mac 10s
Yeah,
in
you
your
gotta. Everybody's gotta have Mac 10. I'm surprised there's not a Tech 9 in here somewhere.
Dude, I thought about it.
Yeah. What we're gonna do is we're gonna move over to this section over here, and we'll take a look at some of these. All right, so next up, we're getting into the section that I really don't know much about. The AKs, the Valmets, all of that stuff, I don't know. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
I can give you a quick rundown. You know, so some of the pieces on the side would be post-sample type guns. You know, that's something I built back at MSAR. You know, the Bulgarian kits were really cool. That's just outside of that standard Hungarian, but the ones up top, you have 2 Chinese Type 56 pre-sample machine guns.
Rare, yep.
And then that one up there, that's one of my Grail AKs. That is a Fleming qualified, fully transferable registered receiver AK. I love that gun, and it's pristine. The 2 pieces here, Galil, you have the 5.56 and you have the 308. Both of these I received, that one there was brand new in the box, got that with all the accessories. The 308, I think the last one I need to do is get the SAR. I have a post-sample version, but I'd love to get a pre-sample to finish that collection. And so, no, I have 3 Type 56. There's another one. My bad.
Yeah.
3. And then, of course, the B&T.
The B&T.
B&T APC. I just threw it back there. Don't mind the shotgun. It came with a part of a thing I had to buy. But the pretty decent piece right there. That's a fully transferable Merrimont M60 in an E6 configuration brand new in the box. So
guys, what you can't see, and we're not going to pan down, but we're walking around belt feds everywhere, and we're not going to pan down on the floor.
We're tripping on them.
Literally, we're tripping over them because, so like on the FNs, this is one of, I don't know how many are in here. They're everywhere, guys. So between M60s, between 240 Bravos, you got a Danish
M60 E6,
M60 E6 over there.
That's a Lima.
E4s.
Yeah, that's a Lima.
Yep.
That's a pre-sample. This is a Mag 58 pre-sample, I believe.
The point is they're everywhere. They're all over the floor. I mean, you just wouldn't know what we're stepping around and over for this, but all of these are machine guns. These are, I've gone through all of them, basically, full disassembly, full teardown, to make sure that it maintains and runs properly. I mean, any one of these guns, I mean, there's some that you wouldn't want to shoot, but all of these are perfectly functioning firearms.
And that's the thing, you know, Ray and I, Ray will always take the time to go through and absolutely, you know, give these a clear blessing to be able to, if we need to shoot them, they're ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like, I wonder if this thing's zeroed. We know that all of this stuff is dead zero. You go to 100 yards, or if it's got a 200-yard zero, it's going to be spot on, and I think that's very important for any collection. But yeah, just in the AK section alone, like I said, it's not something that I've actually put on the channel much. I can respect what it is. I'm just never been that big of an AK guy. I'm more about accuracy. I'm sorry, but I am.
No, the thing about it is just for, you know, to have a library without these types of styles of rifles,
you couldn't do it.
It wouldn't be atomically correct.
Yeah. So more of the Colts here, the Commandos that we talked about. You've got some really unique pieces, a Beretta in here. There's just so much to go over. But I do want to kind of pan over this way, and I want to talk about the Styers.
Yeah, I mean...
These aren't Styers. Some of these are. Some of these are actually MSARs.
These are not.
These are all Styers.
These are all AUGs.
So these are all AUGs, but Tony has a big history with this. long ago, you actually started a company called MSAR.
We did. We started manufacturing the rifles in 2006. You know, I had an infatuation for this bullpup, and I'll say it
From
just
Die Hard.
Die Hard. Carl coming out of the elevator and he's whipping out this gun, put a barrel in. I'm like, whoa, 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 rewind.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with the gun. And not many of the shops had them because nobody liked them.
Yeah.
You know, back in the day, and it's like, because I'd go to the shop, it's like, hey, have you seen one of these? Like, yeah, they ain't gonna sell. You know, how much is it? Well, it's $700. It's like, geez, I can't afford that. But very, very neat system, and fell in love with it. And lo and behold, you know, when the assault weapons ban sunsetted, we wanted to do something, and just to keep the story short, because we'd have to have another episode.
We would.
But we originally looked at doing a 551.
Yes.
So the 551, we contacted SIG to see if we can get permission. We asked them, it's like, hey, if you're not going to import these, could we do it? You know, if we do a good job. They considered it. They got back to us. They said, hey, we have something, a variation. We don't want you to do a 551 because it's going to kill this new SIG 556 that we're doing. I said, okay, well, that sucks. And I was like, well, how about an AUG? You know, and it's like, we contacted Styer, and, you know, we looked at doing a license. Of course, that didn't work out so well. And we ended up doing our own adaptation.
Yeah, and you ended up spending some time in Austria.
Spent a bunch of time in Austria, seeing the factory, and I think the company at that time was just going through ownership changes and everything else.
Yeah.
But that was a wonderful experience to go to see how especially the barrel making capabilities. You know, I'm not going to say that Styer has it all together in every different way, because it seemed like a lot of their equipment was very, very old.
Yeah.
Especially their CNCs and everything else were tape machines. If you know what those are, for the guys that are out there, where instead of writing code, the guys would make it on tape and then feed the tape into the machines. But Styer's barrel making capability was second to none.
Yeah.
Second to none. I've never seen anything more precise than.
Yeah, and that's heritage from probably the SSGs.
100 billion%. They had their, you know, that was their claim to fame, is their launching platform, which is that barrel was second to no one else I knew. So,
yeah, and the MSAR project that Tony did, I know for a fact because I managed that FFL SOT manufacturing license before it was actually turned in and done away with. That is no longer, it is gone, but you guys did over 12,000 of those.
Over 12,000 rifles. It was a really unique run, and like I say, I just it was just a balance, you know. For us, it was like, if we could have done the rifles and kept our knife line going at the same time, would have been better. And then also it changed the dynamics on how we do business today, because we no longer do big distributors anymore.
Yeah, because that can bring a company down.
Well, it did, because these distributors, you know, had multi-million-dollar purchase orders with us that when it got slow, they canceled.
Yeah.
So everybody started choking on the guns, and that wasn't just us, but we just had to postpone the manufacture of that.
Got it.
We had other plans, but I'm very confident, and as we do. You know, all the MSARs now, some used to be in this collection down here, but we put those all up into another area.
That's right.
For review.
That's right.
So we have all the different adaptations, all the prototypes, all the concept guns.
Yeah, I saw the clear ones too.
The clear ones
that went
were very,
to SHOT Show way back in the day.
Yeah, so very, very cool. But no, you know, and what you have here is you have, God, I forgot the model of this one here.
I actually reviewed that one.
Yeah, you
did.
did.
It was odd enough.
MPI 69.
That's it. The 69. That's
69,
right.
Got that one from a buddy of mine, Matt Grassi. Really neat 45 ACP gun made by Styer. And you have one of the original police guns, pre-sample. That's a semi, full auto, and then all the different accessories. So I keep these all in one pot here. You know,
I'm trying to think. There was a very popular TV show on Netflix, and it was based in the 20s, but they used that gun.
Okay.
I cannot remember the name of it. One of you guys will probably remember.
Yeah.
Very, very popular
there.
series.
But yeah, you got some accessories, LMG accessories. I mean, this stock here is an LMG stock that, when put on these guns, it'll fire from an open bolt. So it goes with the LMG barrel, some 9mm kit adaptations. And folks need to think about this. When we started to re-engineer, we took some aspects from the AUG. Doing cross sections on pre-bang guns was a very expensive proposition, because unlike building ARs, you could find guys to get firing pins, you know, gas tubes, any parts. There was nobody to have any supply of these, so we had to make everything ourselves.
Yeah, you did, and very innovative in the way that you did the Picatinny rails.
Hell yeah!
Into the receiver part, being able to put different scopes on there. Yeah, and you could do that with some of these, but
some of the very, very early stuff,
was great. I think you learned a lot about.
We did,
because you outsourced you know, like some parts for it, and that caused a headache for you.
It did, because it's like anything else. You know, there's some manufacturers that you've come to learn that make their own barrels.
Correct.
And then most of them don't.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, we had barrel manufacturers. I think we did,
Green Mountain.
yeah, I'll tell you who did the worst ones, because I'll say it, Mossberg.
Okay.
Well, anyway, the
Yeah,
quality control,
it is.
it is what it was.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
if not, they would have made them through the entire thing. You know, so, you know, we approached them. They're like, we can make those barrels to your spec all day long, and they couldn't. You know, so, you know, the specification just couldn't be met. It couldn't be met at all. But Green Mountain rifle barrel, 100%, I trusted everything that they did from top to bottom, because they're, you know, even though these were not super precision rifles, when we got these bench rested up and we put good ammunition, any one of our guys, Wendell, any of the guys could produce a minute or better.
Yeah.
And that was very impressive for this style of gun, because you think about a standard AUG, you know, is designed to put a target inside the donut and pull the trigger.
Donut of death.
Yeah, the donut of death. And, you know, and we were proud to say that our guns were 100% interchangeable from the first ones to the last, because it had space and everything else. If you look in the original Styer manuals, these are not that way. They
No,
say you gotta,
it says you should not just take a barrel out and put it in another one.
You can't, but we did, and we made sure that it was a very, very meticulous QC process to be able to do that. We're proud of the work that we did in the past.
Yeah.
And we do dig the Styers.
Got it.
Iconic.
Well, let's go check out some of these Glocks and some of these other pistols. All right, so moving on down here, we just have a lot of what I would call duty style pistols, everything from FNs to Berettas to Glocks. You've got some Glock 18 machine pistols, one of my most favorite ones. I'm not touching that one because I know that one usually stays loaded. But you know, one of the ones that catches my eye because it's turned into one of my most favorite firearms, that is the B&T.
Yep.
And so for you guys, you would know it as a TP9, but this is the MP9. These are full automatic, every last one that you see in here. What makes this so much fun for you as it did for me?
Dude, it just, you know, because it has the feel of classic lines. Like, I love the Uzi, I love all that stuff, but just that, you know, just that weight and that balance, that cyclic rate is just something that just rocks my socks.
Yeah.
The control's just everything. So it just, out of the fun factor for a submachine gun, this takes the cake for me.
It does. And the very first one of these that I converted over to manufactured into a machine gun, when I got into this, I couldn't believe how much was involved with the mechanics. I still, to this day, I commend the engineers that came up with the Edward Scissorhands inside of this.
Yes.
But these have been incredible, incredible machine pistols. They did a great job with it. Now, I would have never owned one in semi-automatic personally.
No.
But once I was able to shoot one in full auto, I was like, I'm getting me one of those.
Of course.
These are fun guns.
They're fun guns.
Tons more belt feds on the ground.
Yep.
We're not going to even talk about those or trip over those. But getting into this, I actually like this area. We have some history together.
Yes, we do.
With some of the SCAR, the CQCs, I think they were. We shot a night match. I think
We did.
I
We
think
shot,
we finished very well too.
We finished very well, and it was a night match where we had an opportunity to shoot. If you remember, during the day, yes, we got there and then had a little bit of food, we got a little rest, and then we did the night shoot, which was really good. But we used those two rifles.
And you saw me take a huge digger too. The stage started, you were full mods, got everything on. I take off running, well, the ground kind of dropped away. I was looking at where I needed to go, and next thing I know, I'm eating dirt. It did save the firearm though. It did not get damaged, but you know, coming down, you've also got the 17s. We've got some P90s here. Not PS90s, but P90 machine guns. These are awesome with the true FN suppressor. You've got more saws. So this is kind of like
there's a Mark 48.
Yeah, Mark 48 right here. Yeah, Mark 48. Just some really, really cool setups. Of course.
FNFNC.
Yep, owned one of those.
And then we got a FNFAL pre-sample with the old stick mag. We did the DSA upper on that one there. That's a fun gun. Yeah. And this one's a pre-sample FN Minimi.
Yes.
With a night suppressor.
This one's actually got a night suppressor on it, which is actually pretty unique, pretty rare.
Yeah.
What we're going to do is we're going to go down into some of these Styer SSGs over here, see if we can get some of these on the camera, and then that'll be finishing up this room, and that'll probably finish up this video. All right, so Tony, and I've mentioned this to you before, you know, one of my very, very first quote-unquote sniper rifles was an SSG 69. I've always had this huge love affair with those things. even though it was very plasticky, it had the rotary, magazines.
Yeah.
But you not only have that, you also have the P4. Most people don't know what a P4 is or how it was developed. Why don't you talk a little bit about the SSG, the P4?
The P4 itself was developed for adapting a suppressor to it. So the flash hider came off, and you typically had a suppressor that would kind of go over the barrel.
Yep.
And Styer had a very unique way of attaching the barrels on the SSG. So the same way that they put their gas blocks on, like the AUG, that was a heat switch, where the piece would be heated up and then put over a cold part. And once that cooled, it would never come apart. So the harmonics on the SSG, I believe the upper barrel was done that way. It was done by heat swedge, comes one part, the harmonics are unreal. But what they found out is if you put a suppressor on the end of that rifle, with the gases hitting those baffles, it started to impact the barrels outside of the actions a little bit. So Styer's response to that was to go ahead and actually thread and set. So these are threaded and set into the receivers so that the actual piece...
This is a lot longer than most people think.
Yeah.
They think it unscrews up here at the top. It unscrews down here at the bottom.
So these were short suppression rifles. They weren't designed for going way big distance. It's a law enforcement rifle.
Yeah.
Typical shots, 100 yards.
Counter sniper rifle.
Counter sniper rifle. And this is what they came up with. But it's the wheelbase on the amount that goes into the actual rifle is quite large. But these were threaded and set rather than the heat swedge on the barrels. Very accurately done. Very accurately done.
They were always phenomenal rifles. I know that one of my biggest concerns was you've got a great life expectancy on these because most of these were chambered in .308. So you probably had 10,000 rounds available to you. But I was always concerned about shooting a barrel out and getting it.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, if you're going to shoot one of these barrels out, I don't know how you would rebarrel one of these, especially the standard model. So, but like I say, the way that Styer made their barrels, impeccable finishes, impeccable bores. Distal tapers to their things, progressive rifling, they did it all. I mean, they really did an unbelievable job when it came to platforms and so forth. So, but those were the iconic ones, and even the scopes. I tried to use scopes that were iconic to the period of when I bought them.
Yep.
At least that one up there. And,
so what's your favorite precision rifle scope?
Oh, my favorite precision rifle scope is Night Force. That's my go-to. I think I own quite a few of them, but I love that.
That would be an understatement. But
that's the Night Force that we use, and I run the Mill Radian that you taught me how to do it, and that's where I stay. So if you look at them, you're going to find them all over the place.
Yeah,
it's a 7 to
35.
35. With a I think it's
ATACers.
ATACers.
Got a Beast there.
The Beast I got into, just because I think I bought that one, but no, they don't even make that one anymore.
No, but they said it was the most robust scope that they ever made.
It's pretty sturdy.
And I would have to agree with Tony. I've always been a huge Night Force guy. You guys know that I also shoot the Zeiss as well. But the Night Force, I think bang for the buck, I do not think you can beat them. Now, we even tried going down the road with Schmidt and Bender. You've got a couple Schmitts up here, but
that's one I took off an AI rifle back in the day.
we had some issues with that.
We did, because we spared no expense with doing our first rifle builds, and and we had problems with the tracking and everything, and it was like that can't happen, especially if by the time we get out to go do a shoot, we can't have that happen. We're going home. So, but I've had nothing but good luck with the Night Force optics.
Guys, and speaking a little personally on my end, I can tell you that the only issue I've ever seen or had with the Night Force is when they came out with a new Digiloom system where you didn't have the rheostat under the cap. We did have some Digiloom go out on us, but it's okay. That's not something that's catastrophic. When it came to tracking or anything like that, we've never seen any issues. The Schmitts did not work well for us. We did give them an opportunity. Had quite a few issues with those, and so just kind of strayed away from it, both of us actually. Now for you Schmidt and Bender fans out there, you know what? You like what you like. We know what works. We do use this stuff really hard. And we just did not have the best success with it.
You get into $4,000 or $5,000 optics, they need to work.
Yeah, they do. So without bashing anybody else, what we're going to do is talk about some of these. We're just going to pan over. I'm just going to hold this rifle in the meantime. But you've got a great collection of Colts. You've got some honey badgers here, which I think we actually had on the channel. but now we're getting into some of the Daniel Defense. What do you think about those?
I think that they're my go-to.
So if you had a poop hits the fan and you needed to run and grab something quickly, you're going to go with a Mark 18?
Mark 18.
I am probably going to agree with you. If you had to choose a pistol, what would it be?
It's going to be the HK VP9.
VP9 for you?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I got a bunch of great pistols, but if you're looking at, am I going to throw my like best 2011 in my go to hell pack? No. I'm not going to do that. No. But we've used these guns in some of our matches. I've never had a malfunction. I've never had a stovepipe, and I've had them digest every bit of ammunition I've put through. So some guys could disagree, but as far as a good go-to, of course, with the dot or the the MDI suppressor, it's as good as it gets.
Yeah, it is.
Glocks are great. I would go to Glocks, but of course I'm not going to come over and grab an offensive handgun pistol that weighs 6 pounds.
Exactly. But Mark 23.
Mark 23, or any of the other pieces that I have. I mean, so a lot of people say there's a difference between what your favorite and what your go-to is.
Yeah.
Is a big difference. It's like case scenario too. They're like, well, what if this happens? It's like, well, that's a difference between saying, if the shit hits the fan or if there's a zombie outbreak.
Yeah.
Big different story.
Yeah. Exactly.
Because my go-tos are going to be a little bit different in that respect. But I have an admirable respect for Daniel Defense. I'll tell you another company that's right now I'd be going to is the Geisler rifles. I think that those Super Duties are incredible, and what they've done, I got to give those guys the kudos, because if I was going to do a rifle from the ground up, I would have done it just like they did.
Yeah, I will say that because Tony and I actually ordered some guys with Super Duties, got them.
Yeah.
We both manufactured ours in the machine guns, and those have been flawless. I haven't really given you guys a review on one of those, but I do like mine. I'll probably end up shorting the barrel on it. But we have one more place we're going to visit before we finish this up, and I appreciate you guys sticking around thus far.
Thank you.
All right, so now we are in Tony's library. Guys, I want to thank everybody that's watching the channel, but especially Tony for having me here to be able to share this with all the viewers. But, you're not just a gun guy as well. You are also a knife guy, but also you collect Japanese swords.
Japanese swords
and so,
antiques, yes.
Guys, as an example, and this is nowhere near the oldest or anything else, what do you have there?
We thought it would be. It's a Wakizashi. I forget the actual. I'd have to pull the tang to get the actual maker of the actual sword blade. But late 17th century. It's Tokubitsu Hozan papers on both the blade and also the horimono, which is a little unusual, but I'll show you.
Just beautiful.
Beautiful, but you can see that the horimono of the dragon is carved through the entire blade, so it's pierced all the way through.
And guys, keep in mind, this was something that was made in the late 17th century?
Yeah, 1700s. So it's not super old, but beautiful blade. I thought it would be good for the audience to see, and as we go through, if you do another episode, I could show you some stuff that'll knock your socks off.
Yeah, and so all of this actually has the history of Microtech from your very first pieces to things that have a lot of sentimental value, and basically the history of you and Microtech.
100%, because anytime we would go travel globally, I would always find a trinket or find something along the lines, but there's a lot of history and a lot of stories here.
Awesome. Well, Tony, thank you again.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Guys, I appreciate your time and your interest in this. And like I said, it was really an honor to be able to show you that collection. And that was just one of a multitude of rooms, but that's the one that I like the most. We'll talk about the competition room and go over some of that stuff, because it has a lot of the stuff that we've competed with. But thank you again for having me. And we'll maybe look at doing this at a later date. I mean, Tony is...
Nice,
You're not just a collector. He knows how to wrap the handles, just unbelievable. He actually did one for me recently.
That came out nice.
I have a very old sword, a very old sword.
Kodo period is very old. Yeah, it was definitely out there.
And he said, you know what, it's not going to hurt the value, but the grip looks a little ratty, and you hand wrapped it. I still have the footage.
Yeah, you could do the Tsukumaki on a piece like that. I would never attempt to repolish a blade, but redoing some of the lacquer, doing some of the ornament, like on the handles, is permitted to do if it's done right.
Gotcha.
Yes.
All right, guys. Well, like, share, and subscribe. Please subscribe to the channel. I'll try to give you more content. I know my videos are longer, but I do have a good engagement with the audience, and I hope you guys appreciate the time and effort that goes into all these videos. You guys take care. Have a great one.
Thank you.